Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big League Breakdowns. This is episode 29 of the podcast, and on this video, we will be looking at more free agency as we near closer to that 2025 season. We're going to look where players are going to be going, what teams need, and so on and so forth. If you seen our other video, we talked about the top tier free agents and where they might go, and now we're going to kind of look at everybody else, what teams need to become contenders or stay contenders and all that good stuff. We got the full squad here today for this one. Producer Bobby is back in action, and the podcast is looking great as always. And the three Stooges are here on the camera to discuss everything else related to free agency. And we're just gonna get right into this because we're gonna have a lot to talk about, and it's gonna be a good episode. So I feel like I was looking at the list of free agents, and it is pretty evident that like starting pitching is definitely I think the strongest point of free agency. Um, compared to like the other positions. And I feel like let's start there and kind of work our way through because there is a lot of teams that need starting pitching. I do want to say a disclaimer, by the way, for this episode. We will really not be talking too much about relief pitching and bullpens because it's kind of a crapshoot when it comes to that, and every team kind of always needs bullpen help. So we'll kind of stay out of the way of that. But starting pitching, we can definitely address, and we'll start here with I think like the top of the second tier of free agency and Jack Flaherty, who had a bounce back year in 2024. Gets traded to the Dodgers, wins the World Series with them, and he was a big part of their team and that starting pitching staff. So, John, I'm going to go you first on this one. I feel like the one big concern about Jack Flaherty, and you can kind of, you have firsthand experience with this, is the injury concerns and the inconsistency that he's had prior to this year. I mean, do you think that's a kind of problem for teams when they're looking to sign him to a multi-year deal?
It should be. I mean, what he did with the Tigers last year was kind of how do I put this? It was kind of a unicorn season. In all honesty, Jack Flaherty is not the same guy that he was when he was younger and in St. Louis and, was projected to be this next, the next Nolan Ryan. But in terms of when he's on, and the problem is that I think that his age and his I don't even know if inconsistency is the best word for it. Maybe temper tantrums is the best way to put it. Um, because if I'm a team that he's definitely not my first choice in terms of free agency. If I'm an MLB club, I don't know if he's my second choice, but
But your third choice?
Maybe.
I mean, yeah, I would say he's my third starter in a rotation. I don't think he's my second. I don't think he's definitely not my ace. So I would say he's my number three if I'm looking for one. So honestly, when it comes to Jack Flaherty, what he did with the Dodgers, kind of holding that together and not screwing up so bad that it cost them everything, is probably about as best as you can hope for with this guy.
I mean, I think the Dodgers were a good fit. Of course, the Dodgers being who they are and the talent they have, I think could make any player look good. But 3.17 ERA in 2024 and 162 innings pitched. Um, I think he was just out of the top 10 or maybe just inside the top 10 in WHIP among starting pitchers. And again, I think there maybe is some concern about can he keep it up, but I do, in my opinion, I do believe he is one of the premier starting pitching free agents outside of the guys we already talked about last episode. Like, again, I think he is probably a step down in the tiers, but I do think he's going to be a hot commodity for teams. And I think the Dodgers are going to try to do what they can to retain him. Will, do you think the Dodgers will be able to keep him? Do you think they want to keep him in LA?
Well, if they don't want to keep him, they're the Dodgers. They should keep as much pitching as they absolutely need, given the injuries that will eventually come up for them, because it's inevitable. But I feel like Jack Flaherty, after the success he had last year, is looking to have a bigger role on a team. So I think that he is probably content returning to a Dodgers team if it came to that because of the chance of winning multiple World Series in the near future. But if a team that is on the verge or is a postseason contender and views him as being the ace on their team, I think that's the role he would prefer.
Yeah, and I think that he kind of had to take a big role with LA just because of their injuries, but I mean, kind of alluding to what John said in a way, like I don't think he can be an ace for a team, but I think he's a really good, like a low end second, high third starter for a team, and he can be really good for a team. But you know, again, if I'm the Dodgers, I think it's probably in their best interest to keep him. And I think if you're Jack Flaherty, it's in your best interest to try to stay in LA if that opportunity is
I
there.
I don't think it's in the best interest of the Dodgers to try and keep him. I mean, there's no reason. I don't think the Dodgers would want him back. Like for what
It
he's
depends
going
who
to
they
want,
sign. Yeah.
it all depends on what he wants. Like if he wants to be paid like an ace, why would you want to keep him? Like you're already paying all this money. I mean, I understand it's the Dodgers; they can pay whoever they want, whatever they
Because they're an
want.
endless pit of money. And it's
Yes.
the
Yeah, I
team
understand
in
that.
like 2040 or whatever that'll regret this.
Right, I understand that, but it's also a business, and being that it's a business, I personally would not want to re-sign Jack Flaherty. I think that his age and his inconsistency has proven
He's
that
still young.
Yeah, he's 29.
I know he's 29. I understand that, but for how good he is versus what his ceiling could have been or should have been, I don't think that he's worth, 80 million, which is what Fangraphs is projecting him uh, to have 88 million, excuse me.
What is it, 4 years,
For
88 or something?
yes, exactly that.
Because 22 million a year sounds like the thing that he would probably be aiming for. Around
I mean,
20, I would
Anyway,
think.
honestly, a team that I think that Jack Flaherty to be a good fit for would be a team like the Guardians or the Cubs,
okay.
and using him as a second or even a third.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Guardians could be looking to replace Bieber if he ends up leaving, so that could be a good spot for him. I think the Cubs definitely need pitching if they think that they're a contender and want to stay around. Will, do you see a destination for Flaherty?
I have the Red Sox as a team that I think he could be going to. I do think if it is the Red Sox, it's probably viewed a bit more as an ace role. And I'm not disagreeing with anything that you guys have said because I do believe that given his injury history and the fact that in a way last year was kind of the fluke year per se, given his career trends, even though he definitely has the potential to do that year after year. But it seems a lot of times with teams when a player has a year like Flaherty did and then goes in the free agency, for some reason the mindset becomes, well, this is the new norm for this guy. I can expect this year after year. And then you have a few wiser teams that are willing to hold back and kind of point out that maybe that was just a 1 year thing. And it's a bit of a risk to sign him to a longer term deal. And I think the Red Sox are on that bubble right now of like, they need a few more players to really get back into wild card contention, and they're going to bite the flyer on Flaherty, and hopefully he can help lead them to a playoff run. And he isn't too expensive, so they could still go after other big names.
I think that's like a very Red Sox signing too. Like it just feels like it would be. Um, and I think, look, if you're the Dodgers, kind of going back to your point, John. So you're gonna have Yamamoto next year. You're gonna have Glass now. You get Shohei back for pitching. So I guess it's then what are they gonna try to go
You
after
have
Sasaki? Like
you have your
what's
1, 2, 3 right there.
right? But I still think that they are going to learn their lesson from this past year and say, "Hey, we were I not
No,
that
they're not.
not
No.
they should. Maybe they won't, but
That
they
that,
should.
that is
They
correct.
should learn that, having that depth in that starting pitching is good. And not that you can predict injuries or that I'm predicting injuries, but if they can get him at a number that they feel is fair, because again, money is never an issue with them. I think they go for it. I think he actually stays at the Dodgers, mostly because the pressure is kind of off of him, mostly like if they stay healthy, and I just think it's a good spot for him. I think he probably knows it's a good spot for him, so I have him being retained by the Dodgers.
But
Um,
is 90 million for a number 4 starter
no,
really a
they weren't.
financially wise decision?
No, he would have to take a haircut or a pay cut rather. Like,
And I don't think he's going to want to.
yeah, I mean, maybe not. Maybe, you only have so many opportunities in a career to get your big contract, and maybe that's what he's thinking as well. Because,
He got his
uh,
ring. He can get his money now.
yeah, I
I was
mean
about to say that is how he has
honestly,
to think.
honestly, that could be the case. I guess it just depends where his priorities lie. If he wants to be on a team that he knows is going to be in contention every year for the next 10 years, or if you go to a team that's, maybe not as good, but you get your money. It's what he'll have to weigh. But um, I don't know. For me, I think the Dodgers, if they can get a good number on him, should bring him back. But, we'll see if
I mean,
that's the case.
honestly, another team that I think that if we're talking solely money reasons, if I'm Jack Flaherty's agent, I am hoping that a team like the Angels reaches out to me with a
I
stupid
hope
money
not. It means
deal,
you're going to get hurt for the rest of your career.
but you still get paid.
That's true, I guess.
Paid money to be on the sofa
give me a-
recovering from an injury.
Exactly. They'll give me $100 million to sit on the sideline. Thank you.
The next name I want to talk about is Shane Bieber, coming off of the Tommy John surgery. But man, when the start of the year he had last year, he looked like he was back in that Cy Young form. Will, what do you see happening with him? I mean, do the Guardians try to bring him back? Does he move on? He is entering his age 30, one season. So, what happens with him?
Without going into what team I have him on, I do think he will eventually move on, but I think his situation, or at least the way the market around him should play out, is that since he is coming off of the injury year he had, and he is a bit of a question mark, even though he definitely has the repertoire of being a very productive pitcher, is he's better off on a 1 year deal, maybe like with an option for a second year, probably on a team that either is very conscientious about the innings that their starters pitch, or has a lot of aces or top of the rotation arms ahead of him in case he doesn't quite live up to the person he was before, or he has more injury issues. So he's probably not going to be someone that is quite tier list up there with Flaherty, even though a year or two ago you would have easily put Bieber ahead of Flaherty. But I see Bieber as someone that later in the offseason would slide in with the team as they try to fill up certain holes, or you have the teams that maybe missed out on a couple big names and want to take their chances.
Yeah, I think there's again, I won't get into my pick yet, but I think there's a very interesting spot that he could end up. That would
I wonder if we're
be,
thinking the same spot.
I
But we'll see.
think, I think we might be. Look, I mean, I think there's obviously concerns anytime a pitcher is coming off of an injury that major. We've talked about the Tommy John epidemic that was going on, and everything like that, and what that does for, to
It
players. But
was.
was
Is
was
end.
whatever word you'd like to use. I think, when he got injured, we talked about how it sucks because he's on his contract year, and was he going to be able to go somewhere and get paid? And I wonder how much his contract takes a hit, like from what he maybe was expected to sign for like last year. I wonder how much he takes a hit if he's going to be another player that takes like almost like a bridge contract or like a shorter term contract. I mean,
He's going to have to take a 1 or 2 year deal.
yeah, it kind of like it's almost like a prove it deal again, which is
Right.
crazy to talk about for a guy like that. But kind of take a prove it deal and then kind of see what you got in a player. John, I mean, what is your opinion on Bieber? Because I mean, he again showed flashes of being a Cy Young candidate again early last year.
This probably could have been the best case scenario for the Guardians in terms of being able to re-sign him because he's going to have to rehab. What's good for them and good for him is the fact that this did happen earlier in the season. So you might as well figure in he has, come April, come March, he'll have a year of rehab and, workouts in where maybe by August he could be back of next year, maybe. Um, but in terms of everything else, this probably was the best case scenario for the Guardians, where they could easily sign him to a two year deal worth, maybe 30 million, 25 million, as opposed to the long term multi like tens of millions of dollars extension that he would have gotten, and obviously probably would have left Cleveland at that time. Now you get to get an extra year of him at the worst, possibly an extra year and a half. And if you sign him to a 2 year extension worth maybe 30 million and then see what you have after that, then maybe you can go from there. But I think that this really just benefits the Guardians more than it does Shane Bieber. And then all this does is kick the can down the road for Shane Bieber. And the biggest issue with him there would be then his age. And then you have this lingering injury situation where you have that over top of your head of that question mark of will he stay healthy? Blah 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 blah.
I mean, do you think he stays in Cleveland?
If we're talking about for this offseason, yes, I think that they sign him to the short-term deal. Like I said, I think that's his best option as well. Because otherwise, I don't think he's going to get a big contract like he wants. Because then they have to essentially pay for his rehab and all this other stuff. Anyway, um, then if you look afterwards in like 2027, if we're doing a 2 year deal, then I think that's when he would eventually leave Cleveland, possibly. But until then, I think it's a big question mark. So I see him staying in Cleveland because of this injury and having to rehab, and no other team really wanting to pay somebody to have to wait a year to get their return. It's not like the Dodgers signing Shohei, where okay, you can't pitch in 2024, but you can still hit in 2024. It's a pitcher that only pitches, so it's like
I think that if you're Cleveland, you're probably looking to bring if you're not retaining Bieber, you're probably looking to bring somebody in. Um, well, I'll see if we're on the same page here. I mean, do you first of all, do you see him leaving this offseason? And if so,
Yes.
where?
I have two options that I'm kind of in mind. The initial one I wrote down is the Tigers
Mm.
because they're a team that I could see easily trying to slip him in late in the season with another potential or hopeful playoff push, and he's easy enough that he could fit the model that they did this year. And if he needs to pitch 3 innings for a while and they gradually build him up partway through the season, that's something I feel like they could do effectively. The other team I was thinking of as a team that is not shy of having players come back, especially pitchers midway through a season, are the Dodgers.
Oh, okay. We're not on the same page.
Oh,
Um,
your fault.
yeah, and you're gonna hate this, but I feel like, hey,
Are you gonna say the Mets?
no, I'm gonna say
Braves.
the other team in the division. Look, the Braves have kind of already said they're looking at an established starting pitcher to bring in. Um, you can't argue with what they
I
just
mean, he
got from.
fits because
Yeah, I
he's
mean,
hurt.
you can't argue what they got, from Chris Sale, right? Like it's almost the same situation. I think Chris Sale was kind of getting battered around more with at the end of his time in Boston. But Bieber, I mean, coming off an injury, I think it gives you kind of that three-headed monster again. You can even say four if Lopez is going to be as good as he was this year, next year. But I think they're a team that is kind of openly said, "Hey, we are looking to add another pitcher with some pedigree." I think that makes a lot of sense. I also think, like for an AL team, I do think a team like the Orioles is is an option as well. If they kind of strike out on the bigger starting pitching free agents, I could see them pivoting to a Bieber. And I'm also curious with Bieber, like I kind of look at the list and I think there is a lot of good starting pitching options. I see him standing out just because we know what he can be. I know he's coming off of a major injury, but I'm curious like if he, where he signs, like the time frame. Like, is he going to be one of the first starting pitchers gone? Is he going to be, everybody else goes and he's left over? Like, I'm kind of curious with that too. And again, what his price is. Um, the next kind of thing I want to do is I'm going to kind of group a bunch of pitchers together because I do think there's a lot of pitchers in the same kind of realm. Before we move on to other stuff in the podcast, but I'm kind of looking at this list of free agents, and I would say I'm gonna group Yusei Kikuchi, Nathan Eovaldi, Sean Manaea, and I know he's a little bit older, but Scherzer and Verlander as well. I think like that group of pitchers are kind of in the same wavelength where they're kind of around the same age. They're on the back end of their career a little bit. Obviously for Verlander and Scherzer, definitely the case. But some older, more established pitchers, and I think these guys are very valuable, obviously to teams. So you guys can kind of just pick from that list, and if you want to pick one name or whatever the case may be. But
I'm going to take the whole bunch.
then do it. Go for it. I'll even let you have the mic right now. I mean,
All right, so I need to remember all the names. You said
Kikuchi,
Manaea, Verlander, Scherzer, and Eovaldi.
Yeah, again, guys that are kind of around that same age range, same production.
So I'll start with the two that I have as being re-signed, and that's Manaea staying with the Mets and Verlander staying with the Astros.
Yeah.
I especially think that Manaea is going to sign like a 3-year deal and kind of stay with the Mets because I think the fact that he refound his ability as a pitcher and of course the playoff run the Mets went on that's kind of where he's going to call home for a big chunk of what's probably the rest of his career because he's up there.
So sorry to cut you off, but kind of my question, like I was talking with Flaherty, do you think that's a signing? Like, do you think like Manaea wants to be there and that he's going to kind of maybe take a pay cut, like if need be, to stay with them?
I think in that case he might, especially given the trajectory the Mets organization seems to be taking. I think especially if they do get Soto and then he's offered a contract, he's really going to jump on it.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. So, all right, for Kikuchi, I was looking at the Giants. Their team that'll need they need a pitcher. He's kind of in that mid-tier bubble of someone that has been pretty good at times, has also struggled. I think of the Rodon signing they had a few years back. I don't think Kikuchi will have a ceiling as high as Rodon, but it seems like the type of thing that could help at least round out the rotation there behind Webb. Scherzer one's interesting. To help with a team that is trying to now jump into contention, I have him re-signing with the Nationals on a 1-year deal and reuniting with Rizzo and that bunch. Because why not? Going along
and
with
Strasburg.
Bregman signing. What do you say?
And Strasburg, technically.
Well,
on a
whatever. Old man
yes.
broken down Strasburg. But
he's gonna actually put in effort and try to pitch again because he sees his buddy coming back.
Didn't they work things out and he did officially retire?
Yeah, I think so, but I think it
doesn't matter. He's still getting paid.
They're paying him till the cows come home.
Right, and then I think that just leaves now Eovaldi, who I have going to the Twins. As a team that needs a starter, is going to try to pick someone that has some postseason experience, and then in the end is going to pick a starter that at least during the regular season is kind of iffy. It's not until you get into the dance that he performs well, and I'm not sure it'll be enough, but it seems like a target they would at least go for.
I think that I think the Scherzer pick's interesting because I've seen a lot of people mocking him going back to the Tigers, which is like, oh, he's going to go back to his old team, and then you throw the Nationals in there, which is kind of cool. Yeah, man, I feel like from this list, I feel like Manaea, from what we kind of seen, has potential if he can continue. Again, consistency is obviously, one of the most important things in sports, but if he can be, as consistent as he was last year, I think he's probably the best option in this bunch. What does Scherzer have left? What does Verlander have left? Both over 40, which is crazy to think about because watching these guys as kids. But yeah, John, I mean, what do you think about these names? Again, you can pick one, you can pick all five, you can say whatever you want. The floor is yours.
So in terms of
How many of them are going to the Orioles?
Actually, I was going to start with one.
There we go.
In terms of Yusei Kikuchi, it's very possible that I could see him as a late signing pickup by the Orioles just to get that depth in like the three or four spot in terms of the rotation, if all else goes well. I mean, that's really where he falls no matter where he signs, and I could see him signing with the Orioles in terms of that. Manaea, I do agree with Will. I think he stays with the Mets as that's where he's had the most success. Honestly, I think Verlander stays off of a team. I don't foresee. I mean, the biggest thing with the Astros is we've heard that we've talked about is they need to get younger, and Verlander's not helping that cause. He's not who he once was. He's still effective and he's still good, but is he worth the money that is he worth $15 million? Let's put it that way. Scherzer could be in a similar boat. However, I do think the effectiveness of Mad Max. Really, you look at that. I mean, the Tigers are interesting. The Nationals feels like a long shot. So
The Nationals,
I think
it's more about how serious they are at trying to make the next step this season, which at least a lot of people seem to think that they're ready to. And I mean, Rizzo and Scherzer absolutely have a history. So depending on the role Scherzer wants to take, I mean, is the main thing because he's going to be going to a Nationals team that is most likely not going to make a playoff spot next year unless they make a bunch of big signings or at least notable enough that and the young players they have take the next steps. That's asking a lot, but I mean, I don't think it's unheard of for a player at the back end of their career who's kind of taking things a year or two at a time has a World Series ring, has been on a lot of productive teams, just decides to take it, kind of do the goodbye tour with a familiar ground.
Yeah. I mean, look, the Nationals kind of did that last year in the sense that they signed a lot of veteran pieces. They signed Gallo, they signed Winker. They got production from their young guys with Abrams and stuff. So I feel like, I mean, I don't know how much Scherzer is going to be asking for in free agency. I mean, he's 40 years old. I don't really know what his contract would look like, but I could definitely see that as a place he goes. And I think the
honestly, I
Nationals
could
are
see a
willing to do it.
team. I could see a team like the Brewers. Honestly, they need starting rotation.
I feel like he has the personality to be in Milwaukee.
He probably doesn't, but he's on the back end of his career.
Too much personality.
He's too crazy for them.
He's too Mad Max.
Psycho.
Hey, listen, maybe that's what Milwaukee needs to finally, win in the postseason.
No, he goes to the Angels because the Angels that's where you put your feet.
They're just signing everybody. Eventually, something will work out.
No, he's going to go to the Athletics. He's going to be the person that leads them to a World Series in a minor league stadium.
Oh, please.
Nah,
please.
Scherzer.
In fact, I'll tell you what. In fact, let's have the ALCS between the Rays and the Athletics next year in a spring training facility and in a minor league baseball park. Here we go.
Yeah. No, you know what? He's actually going to the Angels because he'll be with his buddy Rondon again, and maybe he'll actually tell him, "Hey, man, you need to be on the field for like more than 10% of the year. Get your shit together,
buddy. Can you show up this week?
He's only on for
20%." All right, I do have.
Listen, can you at least sign autographs in the parking lot? Okay, something
for $2.
Yeah. I to wrap up this kind of the starting pitching stuff, I want to talk about two teams who I think are desperately in need of pitching, and I kind of want to get your take on these guys. Because again, these guys are a little bit older, they're on the back end of their career. A team like the Cardinals desperately needs starting pitching. Do you see them trying to go after, well, I'll ask you first. Do you see them trying to go after guys like this who are a little bit older, or do you think they kind of go with younger guys because they don't feel like they're on the cusp of, being a contender?
I think they care more about talent right now than they do about age. I think what they want right now is to assemble a team that can get them back into the postseason. And of course, if it is around some older guys, then it's going to be just a very temporary situation. But since the Cardinals are an organization that is built around having success year after year, and now they've had back to back seasons of mass disappointment, last year's not quite as bad as the previous season, that I think right now they're just trying to prove that they still have some fight in them and that they're not a sinking ship.
Yeah, and I think the other team, John, and I'll throw this team to you, in a different situation for sure. They definitely have more talent. But the Texas Rangers obviously win the World Series a year ago. The injuries at starting pitching really caught up to them this year, and now they're losing a lot of that. Um, Again, a more talented team, but do you see them kind of going after this group of players because they need somebody with the Grom there. It's very barren in that starting pitching rotation right now.
I mean, they certainly should if they want to make a bounce back. I mean, it's embarrassing the fact that they missed the postseason. Honestly, in fact, both teams in the World Series missed the postseason last year, and that's rather embarrassing on both sides, but especially for the Rangers, where you're not even in the dance the following year after you win it all.
That's
So,
Bochy's recipe for success.
well, here we go. Anyway, it keeps you hungry, I guess. The point of the matter is that I think that the Rangers. I think they could target older guys, maybe a Jordan Lyles, maybe a Kyle Hendricks to boost their rotation, and then also maybe going after a Scherzer again, maybe even for the fun of it, going after a Verlander, But what the Texas Rangers need to do is really go for higher quality rather than go for quantity. And if they go for older guys that are on the back end of 30 and especially back end of 35, then or in the Scherzer and Verlander's case 40, then clearly they're going for quantity rather than quality, at least in my opinion. I mean, it's you guys could probably disagree. I'm sure you do, but I think that the Texas Rangers, this is a huge offseason for them because they need to bounce back. They need to bounce back quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't see them being in contention for the big starting pitching free agents, to be honest.
And that's why I'm saying you got to go for quality rather than quantity here. And that I don't foresee them being in contention for big guys either. But guys like Luis Severino, guys like Patrick Corbin,
Oh
even
God! If anyone, he needs to go straight to retirement. If anyone picks him up, it's the White Sox.
I mean,
even a guy like not Charlie Morton, Jesus, like Max Fried, going for, or even Jack Flaherty, who we talked about earlier. That's what the Rangers need is quality over quantity. And I feel like if they go for these older guys, they're going for quantity, and that isn't the recipe for success. They tried to run it back last year, running off of, we'll just go with who we had. It worked. It didn't work. And
I mean, the injuries were bad. I will say, I mean, it was bad for them. And I don't know. The Rangers have been big spenders in the past. I just you kind of the way it kind of works now with these big free agents is you have like the five teams that you got the Yankees, the Mets, the Dodgers. all these teams that spend so much money are always in the conversation for these big free agents. So maybe that's why, you don't really hear rumors about these guys going to teams like Texas and stuff like that. But, um, it feels like I haven't heard a lot of conversation about, them being in the mix for like the top, three or four free agent pitchers. So at that point, do they then go to that next tier of guys we kind of talked about? I think regardless, I agree quality over quantity, but you also have to get bodies that are, of MLB quality in that rotation. And I think they have to do something. That is, in my opinion, the biggest hole. They have a lineup that can win them games, but they need to shore up that pitching for sure. Um,
Listen, the best ability is availability, and if you, the older guys you get, the more likely injured they will get.
Yeah. I want to look at pivot a little bit here. We talked about this guy the other day, Willy Adames, potentially leaving the Brewers. And I think that position for the Brewers is now a talking point. I think looking for a replacement at short for Adames is going to be big. This is, they shattered, as we keep saying, our expectations from last year. And they're going to be a contender again. But I think Adames gave them a lot of production last year, and they need to replace him. It's going to be a big point of contention. Will, who do you see them trying to go after to plug that hole?
I almost feel like they have to go to the next best shortstop that's available, and that's Ha-Sung Kim. Um, Brewers are a team that seem to be built heavily also on defense as well as pitching, and that's part of the reason they have as much success as they do. So losing Adames, they really need to have a good defender to replace him. Tricky part is though is they would also need to have an offensive bat, and that's going to be even harder to fill on their budget. They're going to almost need someone to step up. And now Kim has had some success in recent years, but he hasn't been able to necessarily have the same success for an entire season. But I feel like he's going to get 2/3 or half of the amount of money that Adames might get, thinking about how at least coveted he'll be by big market teams potentially. So I think the Brewers' best shot is him. And if that doesn't work, then maybe they have to look into giving up maybe it's a trade that they send off Devin Williams and they get a shortstop in return.
I mean, the other option for them is because they've been so good at this is do you think there's a chance that they just kind of work with what they have in their organization right
I
now,
just
maybe
don't know
move things
what they
around?
have
So they have Joey Ortiz, right? And they got him in the
at
trade from
third.
Baltimore. So yeah, he has been playing third, but he looking back at his game log from this year, he did have some starts at short, so maybe they move him there. So maybe they they have Oliver Dunn projected to be their third baseman as well. I mean, and I know they got some production at him at some points last year. So I don't know. I mean, it, it's the Brewers. Like they don't they're really good at player development, and they don't often go out and sign those agents. But I think maybe they have options. I do think that Kim would be, as you said, the next best option at shortstop. So that'd be a great signing for them. But I think that losing Adames is going to be bigger than people think. I for them. I mean, it is going to be a huge loss. John, who do you have replacing Adames at short?
For the Brewers, honestly, I don't think they'll end up with Kim. I like I said earlier, I think the smartest move for them is to try and re-sign him as best they can. You don't let talent like that out the door. But if for whatever reason they can't, to plug that in at least until you feel confident that Joey Ortiz is ready to take that next step and be your everyday shortstop, and be your superstar shortstop. Go for a guy like Ahmad Rosario or Luis Arias, at least somebody that's a stopgap guy that
Rios
can
had a
bridge.
shot there.
Yeah, yeah. What about a guy like Paul DeYoung? Like, because
I was.
he's.
I mean,
I was looking at age more so and going for caliber of that rather than going for really quality here. Because, like you said, I think that they are grooming Joey Ortiz to be their next shortstop, which he's good. I mean, there's no reason that they shouldn't do that. So I think that for Paul DeJong's asking price, it might be a little too much for them and maybe not worth it. But I don't know. You guys probably disagree.
I would look more at Brandon Drury than I would at DeYoung, and it's partially because of how bad Drury's year was.
Yeah,
He's
he was
not far off of
horrible.
having very good offensive seasons, and the big thing they're going to have to replace as well as a defensive problem at short with the Adames leaving is their offense is going to be that much more depleted. So they're going to have to figure out a way to replace that production. It could be through multiple smaller signings that can kind of build up the player that they lost, Moneyball style, or they can start taking flyers on people. And I feel like, given the production of last year, Drury's going to come in really cheap, and that's going to fit for them because they are not an organization that will uh, jump on the big players. The minute that it seems like a player is too expensive for them, boom, gone.
Yeah, I think Drury gives you some like utility as well. I like DeYoung, right? He was pretty good last year. I mean, all things considered, he put up a lot of home runs at least. Now he was on the White Sox, so like, maybe is it he shined on that team, which is not saying much. So maybe that's why I'm thinking of him. But I think that could be a shot. I don't know. It's going to be tough, man. And I think the Brewers, I'm done doubting them. They will find a way to figure it out because that's
Which
what they
means next year
do.
they'll fail because we'll have hope.
Until I have a theory kind of in sports now that I stand by. Until I'm proven wrong, I will
Welcome to sport.
continue. I will continue to, go with what I've seen. And for the Brewers, they'll find a way. If they want to work with what they have within, they'll figure it out. If they sign a guy, he'll have like a career year. It's what the Brewers do, man. And
Did we
that
say
is
the same thing about the Twins?
No,
I
we've said it
definitely
usually
didn't.
about the Rays.
Yes, I've said it about the Rays.
Oh, yes.
I said they're a 500 team until they tell me otherwise, and they were like a game under this year. And there was some shit times for them. So,
And they're gonna follow.
yes. All right, we'll get to the Phillies because of our resident Phillies fan. I think
Oh, Bobby?
fans.
fan.
Sorry, I can't see you. You're in the dark. I forgot about our lovely producer who's also a Phillies
Yeah,
fan.
so since this is going to me, no, I'm kidding.
um, Obviously, the Phillies are going to be contenders again in 2025, but there is some questions about the outfield, especially that left field position. We kind of talked at the trade deadline last year about if they'd bring somebody in and what they would do. Now, looking at free agents, well, what do you think the Phillies do? Do they stick with what they have? Do they bring somebody in?
Oh, they have to bring someone in. They're gonna bring someone, whether it's a signing or a trade. Um, Dombrowski's already said that things are gonna get shaken up a little bit. Now, exactly what does that mean? I have no idea. There are a handful of players that could potentially be moved that were untouchable a year ago. But one thing for sure is right now they need someone to either be in center field or left field. And the big thing that they keep saying over and over again about the offense is they are looking to have players now that do not strike out as much, can put the ball in play. And so I feel like that can eliminate a good chunk of players now off of free agency since everyone nowadays is all about hit the home run. And if you strike out, you strike out. And the Phillies have enough of that right now. They're going to be looking for the old fashioned player who can get on base and have decent enough defense.
Yeah, and I think it's tricky because there's not a premier name I would say that they could. There is some. Look,
there's one name I keep throwing at you guys.
I will say this, and I'm pretty sure I know maybe where you're going with this. Did they throw everything they have to get Profar?
As long as Profar doesn't want to resign, he's the one I feel like that really fits the bill So as I talk about Jerkson Profar, not the man on screen. Because he's real. I mean, Teoscar Hernandez and Tyler O'Neill are the biggest names, obviously, outside of Juan Soto that you see in left field, and both of them are big power, big strikeout type of guys. So that's not gonna fit to where I think they're going to go. And after that, there's a lot of platoon options, which you could theoretically do with Marsh. But then the question becomes who's going to be in center field. And the center field options aren't necessarily that much more appealing either. So Profar is the one to me where over the last few years, he's struck out around 100 times or even less. And his walk total has been pretty good, usually above 50 walks a season. And last year, he, of course, had the stretch for the first half of the season especially where he was the best hitter average wise in the National League. And then he kind of dipped off into the play it was before, but he still hit 280 and I believe had over 20 home runs. So for a Phillies team that is filled with a bunch of stars, I feel like they're okay if maybe he is more of a 260 type of hitter, but can still hit 20 home runs as long as he can stick with what his career trends have been, which is making contact and walking, then I think they would be fine with that. If that doesn't work out for whatever reason, then I think they're going to trade to find a replacement.
I mean, look, he fits the bill of what they're looking for to a T based on the other free agents out there. And I think based on what he did last year, he sticks out as a premier bat in that pool of players. So I think if you're the Phillies, I think you try to go after him. My only question would be, do they think last year was a flash in the pan? And because I mean, prior to last year, he had some pretty rough years.
I
Um,
mean, I think that's definitely something that is at least on their mind, at
if
least for
they,
Dombrowski, but I don't know if they would necessarily think it matters too much. It might matter in how long of a contract they propose, but I think
right.
that's really it.
I mean, that's going to be my next question. If you're the Phillies and they operate pretty smart, like what kind of length on a deal are you willing to give? Because he is 32 years old
Mhm.
I mean, wrap into that point and the consistency. Like, I mean, our team's going to be afraid to give him like a 3, 4 year deal. Or, I mean, what do you
I
think?
mean, his 2 years would be the one that would be the smartest, it seems like to me. Three seems like it's most likely. If it goes to four, it's because there's a bidding war between a couple teams.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I do think the Padres are really going to try to resign him. So I think his price might hike up a little bit, but yeah, I
The
mean
one
that
thing that could slightly benefit him now, it doesn't really maybe matter in a Padres Phillies situation if they're the two main people going after him, is being an outfielder. He's going to have to wait to see what happens with the Soto market before anything develops for him. So that gives someone like the Phillies or the Padres a chance to jump on Profar before the end of the year because everyone's going to be distracted most likely until January.
yeah.
We saw what happened last year with Shohei and Yamamoto. Just it took a while for things to really get going, and it probably wasn't until mid-January where finally a lot of big domino pieces were falling consistently.
Yeah, I mean, again, you kind of look at the list, you look at what the Phillies want to do and are willing to spend, and he does seem to stick out as the guy for them. Um, so I think they should. I mean, do you think it's more likely that they sign a free agent or trade for somebody?
From an outfield perspective, I think it's more likely that they sign. Um, I think if they trade, it's really the trades are going to be for like ideal pieces that they've been looking at highly about before, like Garrett Crochet potentially. But to do something like that, they're going to have to give up some young talent. And so the Phillies either will try to offset that with selling, like if they get Crochet, maybe then trading Suarez. And Suarez has a year of control, or not a year of control. He's on his last year of control.
Right.
Um, but he's an effective pitcher, and they try to get some young talent back that way. But the Phillies, I think, as much as possible, are going to at first try to sign players, and then if that doesn't work, then they're going to trade to make up for it. But they will try to shake things up slightly.
Yeah. All right, let's pivot over to John's favorite team, the Orioles. We kind of
I
already
was gonna
talked
say the
about.
New York Yankees.
Oh, that's fighting words right there. We kind of
I mean,
already
he's
talked
wearing orange, so
about
I guess it's the mess.
we yeah we kind of already talked about starting pitching for them. We talked a little bit about this last episode, about Santander and kind of what they do in that sense. But I do want to go back to that. Um, if the Orioles cannot re-sign Santander, hypothetically, what is their next best option, or what do you think they end up doing? Do they also, work within? Do they try to get somebody to replace him? What is your thoughts on that?
I mean, what are you left with at that point, honestly? I mean, you're let's look at it this way. Their top prospects, excuse me, the closest one that they have in the outfield isn't going to be available until 2026. And that's Enrique Bradfield Jr. So that's there's that aspect of it that you have to take into account. I don't foresee Dylan Beavers really being, you know, who they're going to want to have to come up and replace Tony and his production. I mean, and we've seen that with when it comes to rookies, where it just seems like they struggle. Is obviously the jump from AAA to the major leagues, whether they're not being a 4A ball, is clearly a huge leap. So when you look at what the Orioles could do in the hypothetical world that I don't think is going to happen, of Anthony Santander leaving, you are left with trying to have to go after Teoscar Hernandez, saying if he is gone, then you're left with Jock Peterson, you're left with Tyler O'Neill, you're left with Randall Grichuk, and really what that is you're just trying to plug a hole, and that's a big issue. They need to lock down their outfield, and this is an issue. They could potentially then decide to trade Cedric Mullins to try and get essentially two for the price of one, because defensively should have been a Gold Glover, but here we are. And then you have Colton Cowser, who should have been the Rookie of the Year, and wasn't. So you have those two slots, but right field is this big question mark. So that's where you're kind of left, scratching your head, and you don't want to be left holding the bag without somebody, anyone, walking in. Um, you know, I just really don't want them to end up with Verdugo. Let's put it that way. I think that would be a
'cause
big
I wrote
waste.
down at one point earlier that they get Verdugo. Then I crossed it out because I changed my mind.
Well,
I don't think they would go after Verdugo.
He is taking his tour of the AL East team, so you're up next.
No.
The Blue Jays are the team I settled on.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that happening more so, but whatever. Anyway, I think that if in that hypothetical scenario, and I really don't want this to happen, but Jock Peterson and Tyler O'Neill would be the best options in that case, because
that's deep.
going from there. Because you have this issue of you're not just losing his glove, you're losing the switch hitting bat.
Yeah.
And those are really hard to come by. And especially one that has power like Tony does, you have that big issue,
Yeah.
So.
I mean, outside of starting pitching and that right field position, do you see them going after anybody else?
Maybe first base, but I don't even think you need that because you do have Mountcastle. I mean, if you wanted to get fancy and go after excuse me, it's currently midnight over.
No, it's not.
On the East Coast.
It's 11 in the morning. We're doing great.
Oh my gosh. If it was 11 in the morning, I'd be drinking coffee. Anyway, in terms of a bigger piece, a bigger splash, maybe a Pete Alonso. The point of the matter is that having a right-handed bat is huge and crucial for this lineup that was very left-handed heavy last year, and that's just how it ended up shaking out. Their best hitters were left-handed. Go figure, So
Well, that wall is moving again, so
well, it is moving in, and that's why I
Yeah,
think that they're trying to attract a right-handed hitter.
yeah, it's possible. The wall saga
The
of
wall is deep enough
Camden
where
Yards.
listen, I understand the mindset. You overcompensate to try and get some left-handers here, or try and get some pitchers here.
There you go.
Find out, okay, we may have gone a little too Jesus. We may have gone a little too far. Let's bring it back in a little bit. Let's pull back in a little bit. Nobody's getting an easy pop out anymore down that left field line. So let's bring it back.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think they're gonna try to, as you said, probably it's good. I don't know. Are they gonna get Burns? Or are they gonna get Santander? Are they gonna get both? It's gonna be big off season for the Orioles.
I think they're gonna have to spend money, and I think they're going to get both, and I think that they're gonna end up going and getting at least another right-handed bat and another pitcher.
Okay. Let's move over to the other side. The other side of the country. I do want to touch on this team because they have a glaring issue everybody sees. So that is the Seattle Mariners. They desperately need some help in that infield. Anybody that can hit the ball, they'll take. And
they're bringing in the popcorn vendor. Hey, can you swing a bat and make contact, please?
The one name that I think is interesting, that I actually have going to the Mariners is Gleyber Torres, and I wanted to see. Okay, so my question to you guys would have been, number one, what do you think about that move? And number two, what else? What else? What else do they do in that infield? Will, I go to you first on this.
So last episode, I had them as a team that would get Christian Walker. So there's your answer for first base, and that's a pretty good answer. Gleyber Torres would be your answer at second base. Sounds nice and flashy. I think it'll backfire because he's overrated as hell.
You hate him.
He's so bad for the last handful of years. He's been the big he started off great, and he's just been a huge disappointment. I don't see that. I see that continuing in Seattle. And then the last option is taking a flyer on third baseman. This was the team that I put Brandon Drury on.
Okay, interesting.
And he'll backfire now.
I mean, that's the thing, though. Would they take a guy like Drury when obviously they need offense, but he was so bad last year?
They'll take a flyer on anyone at this point, but they also are getting the tendency now of it's not the easiest to hit there, especially as a right-hander, but also because the batter's eye sucks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know what you're going to get in the end, but I feel like at this point they are enough of a contender to interest teams. There's enough of a bad rep pertaining to how it is hitting there, especially for right-handers that will hurt them. And so I feel like they're almost forced at times to just take flyers on people. I do think that hopefully I don't care. Don't get a big guy. It's just whether or not it's a person that has a name to themselves that consistently performs well, or is it just gonna be a situation where they're kind of grabbing who they can and they're just getting the back end of people's careers?
I feel like they have to get somebody. They have one of the best pitching staffs in the league, and they need to capitalize on that. John,
I think it's the stadium at this point. It's kind of how there was that whole reputation thing with the Giants an offseason or two ago about how no one wants to play in San Francisco. I wouldn't be surprised if there's something around about no one wants to hit in Seattle.
I mean, it's true. I have heard
it's the rain.
A lot of things. By the way, it's funny this conversation is coming up because, side note, I would play MLB The Show all the time, and I always could not hit at Seattle's park because of the batter's eye. I couldn't see the ball coming in. So you know what? I have firsthand experience of how this is for the
For me,
hitters.
it was Minnesota.
I'm basically an MLB
Does that
player.
count as firsthand?
Yes, that's the joke,
First
John.
hand geek.
That's a joke. John,
All right.
who do you see them getting? Do you think they get Glaber?
I mean, yeah, I mean that just seems like the dumb fit that I think the Mariners would go for. I also see them getting and trying to kick the tires on a Paul Goldschmidt. Honestly, yeah, I just made him do a spit take.
No, you didn't. Our producer did. Go on.
So I see him doing I see them going after a guy like Paul Goldschmidt, kicking the tires on him. Honestly, I really do see a Paul DeJong going to the Mariners and really trying to recapture that there. So they
A
really
lot of
just need to
flyers, a
hit-
lot
they-
of failure.
They need to hit the figure it out button, and you're
All
right, and that's what it'll end up being. So
I got another name, and it's funny coming off of Torres. But what
Funnily
about
enough,
funnily enough? Yes. Screw you. What about Anthony Rizzo? Left-handed bat.
what about him?
Left hand. If they strike out on the big name first baseman, left-handed bat at first base, they need it. They'd be bringing in two Yankees if they get Torres. But I mean, again,
two Yankees for the price of one Juan Soto.
is he a great? I mean, is he a great option? No, but like I feel like he could be a fit for them too, especially
It
like you
depends
said.
on
with
if the Yankees get one of the big first baseman names, because I didn't have the Yankees getting one of the big first basemen. I had him re-signing with the Yankees because I felt like they would almost have to at that point. But if the Yankees were to get Walker or Alonso, then I don't see why the Mariners would do anything else because they could use anyone.
yeah.
What about a Carlos Santana?
What team do I put him on? I put him on the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks are going to be another team that probably need a first baseman, which actually brings me perfectly to my next point. And you already brought up his name, Paul Goldschmidt. Goldilocks, really down last year, but second half of the season he did bring it back a little bit. He batted 271 in the second half. We know that this guy in the past has been an MVP candidate. He is 37 years old now. He is getting up there, but I think he's sneaky going to be a kind of again, if you can't get Alonso and you can't get Walker, what are your next best options? I think he kind of falls into that category. And I think him and Rizzo like might be the best second options, I guess, at first base. So I kind of want to talk about him because I think he's going to be a hot bat. Uh, Arizona has a hole at first base if they lose Christian Walker. Paul Goldschmidt going back to there makes sense. Paul Goldschmidt going to the Astros kind of makes sense. The Mariners.
That's what I put.
Yeah.
Another old guy that will fail them, like Jose Abreu.
Yeah, I was gonna say, did they rely on that again after the experiment last year? Um, but I don't know. I mean, the team I originally had was actually the Giants, and I don't know if that would be in more of a DH role or first base. But I could see them spending some money and trying to get him. I mean, John, what are your if he doesn't go to Seattle, I feel like any of those teams would be good fits. Arizona makes a lot of sense because he'd be reunited with his old team. But what do you think?
I mean, yeah. I mean, like I said previously, I think the best fit would probably be the Mariners, and I think that's the option they're going to end up going with because it's the Mariners and they make dumb decisions. But when it comes down to it, every team has to be asking the question of what can he offer me, and you're not getting the guy you could have gotten even a few years ago. I feel like kind of wasted his career in St. Louis. going, in a way where he got older there and like, really was not. I'm trying to think of the best way to put it, but it wasn't as successful as it should have been. Um, but when it comes to
What? He won an MVP.
I understand that. I'm just saying what
Okay.
it could have been.
Apparently, you need to win 4 MVPs to be successful.
You need to be Shohei. You need to go to an AL
I was
team
about to say.
and win.
You
and
need
then-
to pitch.
I was about to say,
You need to play third base and then run the first and catch your throw.
It's gotta be Shohei. No, I think with him being as old as he is, his best option is going to like the Mariners or going to a team that's willing to kick the tires on him. Maybe the Giants, but
Maybe the Pirates.
nah.
Yeah,
I don't
another
think
team
the
that needs
Pirates are
first
going to
baseman.
spend money.
Oh, come on. Paul Goldschmidt's not going to
He'll
cost
pay
that
for
much.
his retirement home.
Right now, $14 million. That is a bit out of your price range, buddy.
No, I don't think
That's
he gets
one Andrew McCutcheon. So do you want a McCutcheon or a Goldschmidt?
it. That's like taking my firstborn child away, taking McCutcheon away from me. Yeah, I mean the Pirates definitely need a first baseman, so they're probably going to be looking at those options because I cannot take another year of Rowdy Tellez and Connor Joe. So
you know who
they gotta
you're
do
going to
something.
get? Who
What?
you're going to get at first base?
Gavin Sheets.
You're going to end up with Anthony Rizzo, and you're going to like it.
Bro, I'd take Anthony Rizzo. Are
You
you
would
kidding
like
me? I would love that. Somebody that can hit. Oh my god.
I had Ty France as the person you would get.
Ty France is a guy that would be interesting because he has the upside.
Interesting, yes.
Well, he has the upside. We've seen him where he can be pretty good, but he was so bad last year. Even on the Mariners team that couldn't hit, he got replaced. So
I've got one for you, Miguel Sano.
God,
Don't you?
that sounds like Rowdy Tellez 2.0.
Yuli
Yeah.
Gurriel.
He's over 40.
Yeah, why not?
JD Davis, because screw it.
You're literally rattling off the entire list. Okay.
Is there any other teams or players you guys are wanting to talk about before we start to wrap this show up? Will, you got any teams or any players you want to?
Anything that's of interest?
Anything that's of interest that we haven't talked about that you want to add before we wrap this up?
I mean, we covered a lot, and I could talk about everyone, and we've been at this for far too long.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I mean, yeah,
Jose Abreu.
We've been through.
I'm gonna answer the one question you told me ahead of time. That's my final thing.
Oh, I already forgot what I told you. So
Tanner Scott's gonna go to the Diamondbacks.
well, that's a team that needs relief pitching in the worst way. So they're probably going to say, all right, relief pitchers are out there. What top guys? We're offering everybody. It can't be as bad as it was last year. All right. Actually, I do have
Kyle Higashioka. He's not a first baseman, but the Pirates are going to sign him as one.
John, anything else you want to talk about? Teams, players?
I hope the Yankees don't land anybody.
Okay, well, they're going to. It's the Yankees.
I have the Yankees potentially doing a trade to fix the third base situation.
How about they just fix their coaching situation? Learn the fundamentals of baseball, guys, and maybe you'll win the World Series next time.
I'll ask this last.
When the other team's game plan is to put the ball in play and watch you self-implode.
Hey, Aaron Boone got them to a World Series, so take that back.
Boone's a fraud.
Two teams I want to talk about before we wrap up actually is the Diamondbacks and the Reds of all teams. The Reds get rid of Jonathan India at second base. We kind of talked about them, or at least I did in the last episode, of like a sneaky team where I think that they could make a run at some of the top guys. Like
and do absolutely nothing.
And the Diamondbacks needs a power bat again. They need, obviously they were incredible last year in the offensive category. The main priority is pitching, but I feel like they also need a bat. Do you guys have anybody like that you could see going there? Because again, they're going to have to probably replace Christian Walker. yeah, replace Jock Peterson. Any names that kind of stand out that end
I'll
up
make
going
this
there?
nice and easy. I've already said that Santana's the answer at first,
Right.
and I have them bringing back Peterson.
Okay. Fair enough, John. How about you?
Uh, well, I'm going to try and fix their pitching issue. Go after Blake Snell.
So they
No,
need
no. They don't need a starting pitcher.
They
They're
need
already filled.
relievers.
Go after Snell.
We're moving
Oh.
Snow to the bullpen.
Either that or go after Jeff Hoffman.
Jeff. Oh, okay. Yeah, it took me a second.
Who wants to be a starter?
Yeah, I don't know, man. Maybe bring back JD Martinez if you're the Diamondbacks. And
Kirby Yates.
I think the Reds make a play on somebody. I really do. But regardless,
I thought you were
For
about
the
to say
Reds,
you
I
think the
wrote
Reds
down
make the playoffs.
absolutely nothing.
really, I don't know, man. I feel like they're
They
sneaky.
got Singer in the trade right now, and they gave away India, and McLean is going to take second base, and that's that.
I don't know, man. They bring in
They'll get some bullpen
manager
help,
with
but everyone does.
yeah, but they bring in Francona. I think like they're going to be inclined to make moves, don't you think?
Yeah, they're going to make moves like the Guardians do and get who knows left bench player this to do that. they'll throw something together.
I mean, I hope that's yeah. I hope they don't get anybody. Again, I hate the Reds, but
I think. Well, here's the thing about the Francona move. I think what it says to me a little bit is that they believed they had the personnel to make a playoff run, and they didn't.
right.
So therefore, I don't think they're going to make quite as many drastic decisions as you think because they believe Francona can correct whatever they thought Bell did wrong. And if you looked at the run differential for at least a lot of the season, it had them at a winning percentage based on, again, run differential and expected win-loss record then what they were actually doing. It was like a 6 or 7 win difference at times. That gap closed later in the season. But, I mean, I think that the biggest thing they do is what they just did.
Yeah. I mean that's true, but also is it the fact that they feel like they had the personnel to make the playoffs, or they took a step back last year? Like, I mean, I don't know. I guess it could be either of the two. I just feel like maybe they don't go out and spend big
It's the
money.
same response the Phillies had when they fired Kapler. The only difference was we hated Kapler.
The other difference is the markets are very different, and the way they spend money is very different, which I guess is hurting my point in a way. But I don't know, man. They just feel like they're going to be sneaky, and I'm going to hate it.
That's the thing is that I think that they need to make a bigger splash and make it in one shot. And I think how they're going to approach fixing their issues is going after like starting pitching versus realizing, hey, here's what the biggest issue is, which is relief pitching. So
Yeah, it's possible.
that's why I think that's why I do think like a guy like Blake Snell or even maybe Jack Flaherty could end up with the Reds in that scenario.
But they won't.
But they won't. Will is set on
Smart,
that.
they won't.
All right, let's wrap that up there. Yeah, it's gonna get fun. Free agency kind of already kicking off. We're seeing some
Free
signings.
agency is the worst in baseball.
The worst.
Of any sport.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like the worst part of baseball.
I mean, it's the part with no baseball.
It's the part where the Dodgers spend their whole checkbook again.
I was about to say, here's the
I
reality
get to watch
of what
absolutely no baseball for the next 4 months, and 3 of that is spent with people talking amongst one another, and absolutely no signings happening. Like every
Like
day,
what
I
we're
wake
doing
up
right
and look
now?
at my phone. It's like today's the day. Nope.
No.
here's the
Remember
reality.
Bryce Harper when he was going to go to the Phillies, how we were tracking planes during that? That was the only like good off season that we had.
Whoa! What about last year with Shohei when he was
Shohei.
on that flight to Canada
Dude,
and then turned around midair?
Toronto was like so certain they were getting him. They were so certain, and then they were let down.
That's
once
probably
again.
going to happen in the Soto situation. Let's just be honest. There's going to be one false
Yeah.
article. Hey, we want to bring back Arson Judge.
Yeah. I mean,
Let's look at the reality of free agency. It's exciting if you're the Yankees, Dodgers, or another big market team that is in the hunt for these major superstars. Everybody else is kind of left picking the bones and trying to go after these big names if they feel like spending money. If you're a small market team that doesn't want to spend money, you're left with the scraps and you're the last one of the bowl. Enough said. There we go. Free agency sucks. Wear your seatbelt.
Fair change.
With that, we are going to wrap up. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast, as we're going to have a lot of videos probably covering these big signings when they happen. Also, I believe
I was about to say if they
happen. I also believe we are releasing this video the day before Thanksgiving, so make sure to enjoy your Thanksgiving, eat some good food. If you are in the United States, follow us on Twitter at BL_breakdowns, Big League Breakdowns everywhere else. Again, subscribe if you like the content, like the video if you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time for episode 30.
Wear your seatbelt.